The horse was limping. Its breath came out in white ribbons against the dusk, hooves dragging through the dying grass as thunder rolled low across the plains. The rider didn't look up. His hat brim was soaked with dust and sweat, and his coat hung heavy on his shoulders. The wind pressed against him like a hand, trying to push him back the way he'd come. Then he saw the house, leaning against the horizon like it had lost the will to stand. A crooked chimney, a porch missing planks, a single lamp flickering behind a warped window. He slowed the horse, listening. Nothing but wind and far-off thunder. Still, he knew eyes were watching. He dismounted, boots sinking in the mud, and knocked twice on the door. Silence. Then the sound, the metallic click of a rifle's hammer being drawn back. A woman's voice came through the wood, steady but trembling at the edge. "Don't move another inch, mister." He kept his hands where she could hear them. "Ma'am, my name's Hale. Just need water for the horse, and a dry corner for night." The pause that followed was long enough for another rumble of thunder. From behind the door, "Ain't got room for strays." "I'll sleep in the barn," he said. "You won't even know I'm here." Another voice, younger, sharper, cut through. "You can't stay. Move on." The first woman whispered something he couldn't make out. A latch clicked. The door creaked open an inch, and the lamplight touched her face. Thin, tired, with eyes that had seen too much and still weren't sure what they were seeing now. Mara Fletcher. Behind her, the younger one, June, stood with the rifle still raised. Mara's voice softened. "You said your name's Hale?" "Yes, ma'am." She studied him a long while, eyes flicking over his worn boots, the old revolver tied down on his hip, the way he didn't flinch under her look. Then she nodded once. "You can sleep in the barn, but come daylight you ride. That's fair." June didn't lower the rifle. She watched him cross the yard, lightning flashing behind him, the wind lifting his coat like wings of ash. The barn smelled of dust and old hay. A horse's skeleton leaned against the far wall, ribs white in the lamplight. Hale set his saddle down, poured water from his canteen into a trough, and listened. The wind slipped through every crack in the boards. From the house came muffled voices, the sisters arguing. "You saw his gun." "He's old, June." "So it was Pa before they shot him." Then quiet. Hale took off his hat, brushed the dust from it, and looked toward the far end of the barn. A small grave stood just beyond the fence, wooden cross, no name. He stared at it a long time before lying down in the hay, revolver beside him. Outside, thunder crawled over the land. When he woke, the world smelled of rain and ash. Morning light slipped through the gaps in the barn, gold and thin as thread. The sisters were out front, struggling to haul a bucket from the well. Hale stepped out slow, careful not to startle them. "Let me?" June's glare cut sharp. "Didn't ask for help." Mara nodded toward the rope. "You can take a turn if you like." He did, strong hands pulling smooth and steady. The bucket rose easy. When he passed it to them, Mara gave a small smile. "Thank you, Mr. Hale." He shrugged. "Old habits." She studied him again, curious. "You a rancher?" "Was." June snorted. "And now?" He looked past her, at the horizon that kept stretching and never gave answers. "Now I just ride." As he fed his horse, he saw the graves behind the barn. 3 of them. The middle one's carving caught his eye. Yef. The letters were fresh, carved with care. He felt the weight of silence press around him. Every sound, the bucket clanking, the flies, the creak of wood, seemed too loud. When he turned, Mara was watching from the porch. "They were our kin," she said quietly. He nodded. "Hard land to keep people alive." "Harder to keep them safe," June muttered. Something flickered behind Mara's calm, grief or guilt. "We manage." Hale nodded again and went back to tighten the girth on his horse, but his eyes stayed on the house, the windows dark as watching eyes. By dusk, the sky bruised purple. Hale sat outside the barn, rolling tobacco. The sisters had lit their lamp again, its glow soft against the storm coming in. The wind brought the smell of wet dust. And something else. Smoke, faint and far off. He lifted his head. The horse shifted nervously. Then, from the dark beyond the pasture, a lone coyote howled. Cut off halfway, he stood, every nerve awake. Mara opened the door, shawl tight around her shoulders. "You hear that?" He nodded. Coyotes don't stop like that unless something stops them. June appeared behind her, holding the rifle again. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying someone's out there." Lightning flared white across the field, and for an instant, 3 horses stood near the ridge before vanishing back into shadow. Mara's breath caught. "He said he'd come back." "Who?" Hale asked. She didn't answer. Later, the storm broke. Rain hammered the roof, wind screaming through the eaves. Hale lay awake in the barn, eyes open to the dark. He could hear the sisters inside, whispers lost beneath the thunder. "He'll kill us both this time. Maybe he just wants to land." Pa's gun still on the floorboards. Then footsteps across the porch. Slow, cautious. He rolled up from the hay, revolver drawn. The door creaked. A shape framed in lightning, the younger sister's silhouette. June's voice was barely a whisper. "You awake?" "AM now." Her eyes darted behind her. "They're coming." "I saw lights out by the ridge." "How many?" "Couldn't tell." He nodded once. "Wake your sister. Keep the lamp low. Don't fire till you see faces." June hesitated. "Why were you helping us?" Hale checked the cylinder of his revolver, spun it slow. "Because I've seen this kind of night before." Lightning flared again, brighter, closer. The rain fell harder. When June turned to run back to the house, Hale stepped out into the storm, coat plastered to his back, hand resting easy at his side. The wind howled around him, carrying the smell of smoke, gun oil, and coming death. Behind him, the horse whinnied once. Ahead, the prairie stretched endless and black. He breathed deep, the way a man does before reckoning. And under his breath, half to himself, he said, "Just want a place to rest." Thunder answered. The land did not. The hammer hit wood again and again, sharp, clean sounds cutting through the morning stillness. Thomas Hale drove nails into the fence post while the sisters watched from the porch. The storm had passed, but the land hadn't forgotten. The air still smelled like smoke and wet earth. June crossed her arms. "Didn't ask you to fix it." Hale didn't look up. Didn't ask for breakfast neither. Mara turned toward her sister. "Let him work, June. Fences don't mend themselves." The old man's hands were steady, the kind that remembered labor more than comfort. Each strike landed sure, measured, like he'd done it 1,000 times before in quieter years. But his eyes kept flicking to the tree line, scanning the distance. Something had him listening. By noon, the heat came back hard. The field shimmered silver and gold. Hale leaned on the fence rail, sweat darkening his shirt, watching the horizon. That's when he saw the dust cloud. Not wind, not a storm. A rider. He tensed. One hand resting lightly on the post, the other near the revolver on his hip. Mara noticed first. Someone coming. June went inside for the rifle without a word. The rider slowed as he neared the gate. A thick-shouldered man with a scar splitting his upper lip. The kind of man who smiled like he already owned what he was looking at. Morning. The stranger called, pulling up his reins. Didn't reckon I'd see folks still living here. Mara's voice held tight. "We live here just fine." "Yeah, I see that." His eyes moved over place. The patched roof, the graves, the stranger with a gray beard standing quiet by the fence. "Didn't know you had company." Hale said nothing. The man spat into the dirt. "Name's Clay Bodine. Used to do business with your pa." June stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand. "That business ended when you put him in the ground." Clay chuckled low. "Now, that's a harsh way to remember it. Your daddy owed men money. We just came to collect." Hale's voice finally came, calm and even. "You done collecting?" Clay turned his horse toward him. "Who's a skin?" "Just someone who doesn't like graveyards growing." The smile faded. "Don't recall seeing you around here before." Didn't ask to be seen. For a long moment, neither moved. Only the creak of saddle leather and the slow grinding of wind through grass. Then Clay tugged the reins. "You take care, mister. Some debts don't stay buried. He turned and rode off, the sound of hooves fading into the heat. Mara watched the dust disappear. He'll come back. Hale nodded. Yeah, he will. June looked at him. You talk like you know him. I know his kind. Inside, the air was cool and dim. The sisters sat at the table. Hale stood near the window, eyes on the ridge. Mara spoke first. They killed our father because he wouldn't sell. Said the land had iron beneath it, worth something to someone far away. We buried him out back. Then they took what little we had left. June's voice cracked. They said they'd come back for the deed. I sent word to the sheriff, but he never came. Nobody did. Hale's jaw tightened. You sent a letter? Mara nodded. A month ago. Begged for help. No answer. He said nothing. Just stared at the grave markers, at the wind moving through the dry grass like the whisper of the dead. After a while, he asked quietly, that third grave, the small one, whose? Neither spoke. Then Mara said, my sister's boy caught a bullet when they came. Hale's throat worked, but no sound came. He turned away and went back outside. The sun dropped low, gold bleeding into rust. Hale sat by his horse, sharpening a knife, the sound soft and steady. Mara came out with a tin cup of water. You don't have to stay. Didn't say I was leaving. You got no stake here. These are our ghosts. He looked up. Ghosts don't care who they take next. Her hands trembled as she passed him the cup. You sound like you've seen it before. He took a sip, eyes distant. Seen too much of it. She hesitated. Were you a soldier? He didn't answer. Then June's voice came sharp from the doorway. Whatever you were, it's not our fight. Hale rose slow, slipping the knife back in its sheath. If that's true, you best start running tonight. Mara's eyes searched his face. Who are you, really? He met her gaze, something hard behind the calm. Just a man who's done running. Night came thick and black. The wind had died, leaving the world too quiet. From the house, a single candle burned. Hale sat outside the barn, rolling smoke between his fingers. His horse shifted restlessly. The silence carried weight, like the land was holding its breath. Then the sound came, distant, soft, deliberate. Hoofbeats. He looked toward the ridge. Nothing visible yet, but he knew that rhythm. He'd heard it in another life, chasing men across the Badlands. He reached into his saddlebag and drew out something wrapped in cloth. He unrolled it on his knee. A badge, dull silver, edges worn smooth. U.S. Marshal. He stared at it under the moonlight, the name half scratched away. The memories came without permission, a cabin burning, a boy crying, gunfire echoing through smoke, a letter folded in his coat pocket that began with a woman's name and ended with "Forgive me." He slid the badge back into the bag, eyes cold again. The sisters' voices drifted from the house, low, afraid. He's still out there. He won't stop this time. Hale rose, checked his gun, and stepped toward the porch. Mara opened the door before he knocked. Candlelight touched her face, pale, resolute. They'll come by dawn. Then dawn's as far as they get. She swallowed. You'll kill them? If I have to. June appeared behind her, rifle in hand. You don't even know what you're walking into. He looked past them at the graves, the leaning house, the land that had been soaked in one family's sorrow. I don't need to know, he said. Just when. Mara whispered, when the crows start moving, that's when they ride. He nodded once. Then get your shutters closed and your fire low. He stepped back into the dark, coat drawn tight. The prairie wind began to stir again, low, mournful, carrying the smell of coming rain. Somewhere in the distance, a lone wolf cried, and Hale whispered to it, as if it could hear, not tonight. Rain hissed off the roof as the dogs began to bark. Mara froze at the window, the candle trembling in her hand. June already had the rifle braced against her shoulder. Outside, through the dark veil of storm, the orange glow of torches wavered on the ridge. They're here, June whispered. Hale stepped from the barn's shadow, slick with rain, his revolver already drawn. Lightning flared. For a breathless instant, the prairie came alive in white fire, and the figures appeared like ghosts walking the storm. 4 riders. Clay Bodine at the front. "Lights out," Hale said. Mara blew the candle. The house fell into silence, but for the rain hammering the walls. Hale stood in the doorway, eyes fixed on a line of men now dismounting at the edge of the yard. The thunder drowned their voices, but their laughter carried, low, mean, eager. The wind shoved rain sideways. The torches hissed, throwing wild shadows over graves. Clay's voice cut through it all, booming and raw. "Evening, ladies. We come for what's ours." Mara's breath shuddered out. June's grip tightened on the rifle. Hale stepped out from the porch. Coat plastered his frame, boots sinking into the mud. "What's yours?" he asked, his voice low, barely above the rain. Clay grinned, torchlight flickering over his scar. "The deed, the land, maybe a little company to keep the night warm." Lightning cracked overhead. Hale didn't flinch. "You cross this yard," he said, drawing a slow line in the mud with his boot. "You won't cross back." The gang laughed, all but Clay, who watched the stranger's hand rest easy near the gun at his thigh. "Old man, you forget where you are?" Clay sneered. "Ain't no law out here." Hale's voice stayed even. "Then I guess I'll have to do." The next lightning strike lit everything in white fire. Clay's men reached for their guns. Hale moved before the thunder came. 2 shots, clean, precise. When the thunder followed, 2 men were already down. The third stumbled, firing wild into the dark. The bullet punched through the porch rail, splintering would near June's face. She fired back, one trembling shot, missed, and another, truer. The man fell backward into the mud. Clay ducked behind a post, cursing. His torch dropped, flames spitting out in the wet. "God damn you," he shouted. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Sure I do," Hale said, reloading slow, rain dripping from his hat brim. "You're the kind that never learns till it's too late." He stepped forward, calm, measured, like a man walking to church. Clay fired. The shot grazed Hale's arm, spinning him slightly, but he didn't stop. The next lightning flash showed the old marshal's face clearly for the first time, eyes cold, steady, without mercy. Mara saw it then. Recognition hit like a shiver. "He's not just a rancher," she whispered. "He's—" But her words were lost in thunder. Clay's last man lunged from the side of the barn, swinging a blade. Hale caught the motion, turned, and the gun barked once. The man collapsed into wet hay. Smoke drifted thin in the rain. Then only Clay remained, crouched by the fence, bleeding from his shoulder, snarling like a trapped wolf. Hale walked closer. Clay's voice cracked between pain and rage. "Marshal Hale, that's what they called you, wasn't it? Heard you was dead. Guess the stories lied." Hale stopped a few feet away. "Stories usually do. You ran," Clay spat, "after Red Creek, after your wife." The word froze the air. Hale's gun lifted slow. "You don't say her name." Clay grinned through blood. "Maybe she's waiting for you where you left her." The shot came fast, cutting the rest off. Clay dropped, face half in the mud, eyes staring at nothing. The rain poured harder, washing crimson into the earth. The silence after was heavy, broken only by the groan of thunder rolling east. Mara stepped from the doorway, lamp in hand now. Its flame wavered, lighting the yard full of smoke and ruin. June followed, rifle still trembling in her hands. She stared at the fallen men like she didn't believe they could be real. Hale reloaded one last time, holstering his weapon with a slow, weary motion. Blood ran down his sleeve, but he didn't seem to feel it. Mara's voice came soft. "You knew this would happen." "Been happening my whole life," he said. She moved closer, eyes searching his face. "Who are you?" He looked past her, to the graves glistening in the rain. "You used to be someone who made things right, till it cost more than I had left." June swallowed hard. "You were a lawman." He nodded once, barely. "The law died out here," she said. "Maybe," he murmured. "But justice don't die so easy." Lightning flared again, showing the faces of the dead scattered in the mud. The smell of gunpowder mixed with wet sage. Mara's hand trembled against her shawl. "He'll come back," she said, her voice hollow. If not him, then the ones who follow. Hale looked toward the horizon, the dark field stretching endless, the faint whisper of wind moving through them again. Then we'll be ready, he said. She caught his arm, eyes bright with something that wasn't just fear. You're bleeding. He smiled faintly. I've been worse. Let me? He shook his head. Later, behind them, June kicked at one of the torches, snuffing it out in the mud. Ain't gonna be any later, if more come. Hale turned to her, voice steady. They won't tonight. How do you know? Because wolves don't hunt when one of their own's been buried in the dark. The wind rose, carrying smoke away. The storm began to drift east, leaving the air cold and raw. Hale holstered his weapon, stepped toward the porch, and looked once more at the graves, at the small one nearest the fence. He tipped his hat. He can rest now. Mara's voice trembled. And you? He didn't answer. The dawn was crawling up over the plains when the last thunder faded. The clouds broke apart, pink light bleeding through. The sisters sat on the porch, silent. Hale stood by the fence, watching the ridge where the riders had come. The wind carried no sound now. No horses, no laughter, no threat. Only the hush that comes after blood has been paid for in full. He turned, walked toward his horse, and paused when he reached the saddle. The badge glinted faintly in the lamplight from the porch. He ran a thumb over it once, then tucked it back inside his coat. June's voice came low. You gonna ride now? Not yet. Mara's eyes followed him, something like sorrow deep behind them. Then what? Hale looked toward the rising sun, his face unreadable. Now we wait to see if peace remembers this place. And with that, he walked down into the wet field, where smoke and rain had mixed into the same thin mist. A man made of silence, standing guard over the house that would never sleep easy again. Dust hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Abigail stood with her rifle braced against her shoulder, her jaw locked tight, breath trembling in her throat. The barn door yawned open behind her, lantern light spilling over two bodies face down in the dirt. Jessup's men. The night pulsed with silence, broken only by the groan of wind through the mesquite. Then came the third shadow. Jessup himself stepped from the darkness, revolver gleaming beneath the waning moon. His vest was open, his boots dragging with that lazy arrogance that made men hate him before they feared him. You think you can take what's mine, girl, he rasped. You and that drifter? You don't even know who you're protecting. Behind her, the ranch door creaked. The old stranger stepped out. The moon caught his face, creases deep as riverbeds, eyes like blue steel cooling after battle. He didn't carry his gun on his hip anymore, but on a leather strap tied low to his thigh. Abigail saw the way his hand hovered near it, gentle as a prayer. Put it down, Jessup, the stranger said. His voice was quiet, measured, like a sermon over a grave. Jessup barked a laugh. You got some nerve, Marshal Kane. The name hit the air like a bullet. Abigail froze. Marshal. Kane. The same Kane who vanished after the Red Mesa massacre. The one the papers had killed his own men to save a town no one remembered. The stranger didn't deny it. I don't want blood tonight, Kane said. These women have seen enough of that. Jessup's grin curled into something meaner. Then maybe they'll see yours instead. He fired. Kane was already moving. A blur in the moonlight, a whisper of cloth and gun smoke. One shot, then another, both his. Jessup's revolver flew from his hand, spinning into the dirt. A third bullet hissed through the night, slicing his shoulder. Jessup dropped to his knees, clutching the wound. Kane walked toward him, revolver steady, eyes empty of triumph. You could have walked away. Jessup spat blood. So could you, Marshal. Long ago. Kane's silence stretched until even the night wind seemed to listen. Then he turned, holstering his weapon. Bury your dead, he told Abigail softly. This land's clean now. Keep it that way. But Abigail's voice cracked through the dark. Where will you go? Kane paused at the edge of the homestead, where the fence met the open plain. His hat brim shadowed his eyes. Rest, he said simply, if the good Lord still allows it. Dawn came red as rust, bleeding over the horizon. By the time the sheriff arrived from Laramie, There was nothing left but the smoke of the fire and the whispers of what had happened. Jessup's men gone, the widow and her girls safe, and the stranger vanished. All that remained was a marshal's badge nailed to the porch rail, burnished and cracked. Abigail found it glinting in the early light, still warm to the touch. She took it in her palm, feeling its weight, its silence. Years passed. The ranch grew tall with wheat and wind. The girls became women, then mothers. But every winter night, when the wind clawed down from the mountains, Abigail would sit by the fire and tell the story. She'd tell of a weary man who rode in from nowhere, carrying ghosts heavier than his saddle. A man who sought a place to rest, and found instead a reason to stand again. Some said he died out there, buried under the same stars that watched him ride away. Others swore they saw him once more, an old marshal on a pale horse, crossing the desert where no one dared to go. And the old folks around those parts still whisper. If you find yourself lost near the canyons at night, and you hear boots crunch in the dust, don't be afraid. That's just a restless marshal, making his rounds, making sure evil never sleeps too long. And so the tale lived on, passed from ranch house to saloon, from campfire to cradle. The rancher just wanted a place to rest, they'd say. But the women had other plans, and God himself must have smiled, for out of dust and sorrow a legend rose again. The fire would crackle then, faces lit like lanterns, and the storyteller's voice would drop low, carrying the hush of the plains. Now, children, you remember, justice don't always wear a badge. Sometimes it just needs a place to lay its head,